Hey guys, you hear the Ukraine strikes back? They've taken back 3,000 square miles.
No, Patrick. This is supposed to be the joke part of the show.
Oh, well, I think that's hilarious.
That's worth
actually.
celebrating. It's awesome. But is it funny? I don't know.
I can't stop smiling.
Well, me too. I mean, okay, you got me there. All right, guys. Patrick, tell us about this new thing that we're going to be doing on the show.
So it's something that we do as a matter of course with our clients is when we see news items that can affect an organization or even individuals, we compile 3 questions.
Okay.
And the 3 questions are obviously things that the most people would want to know. First off, does it apply to me? Because if it doesn't apply to me, most people want to stop listening immediately unless it's going to be funny or entertaining.
Which it always is.
So when there's a breach on a phone, a mobile device, on a Wi-Fi router, or on something that a small business, a medium business, or even a large business, but especially an individual might be using,
right.
You want to know, how do you know if that applies to you? How do I know if this is a story I have to pay attention to? Okay. Let's say the answer to number 1 is yes, it does apply to you. What do you do about it? That's the next question everybody wants to answer. Do you patch? Do you stop using it? Do you throw it out the window? Do you, what do you do? What's the next step? And then the last is the why. Well, what could happen? What could Dwayne do if you don't take our advice? What could
so
Dwayne
the career
do to
criminal advice part
I think
of the
we'll
show.
be playing that sound. So once or twice a week, maybe 3 times if it's been a bad week, when we hit a story that has those criteria, it's not going to be war in Ukraine. It's probably not going to be ransomware. It's not going to be some of the political stuff. But when we get to specific software that might be running on a system that you care about, we're going to bring this up. And we'll just address the 3 questions. It'll be quick and easy, but I think it's important for people to know it, and we'll do it every week.
That means I got to write a new theme song.
Right?
Well, here's the thing. We have been doing that on some of the stories, but I guess you're saying now is we're going to make this a more prominent feature of the show where we're going to do maybe less of the stories that don't affect our lives and more of those that possibly could.
I think we're going to squeeze in some stories that are much more likely to affect your life, but we're still going to have plenty of time to talk about all the other crazy stuff that happens.
Sure. All right. I want to start with this story because Kelly, my wife, brought it up to me. She thought it was interesting. The Greek Watergate, in quotes, phone tapping scandal. All right. So apparently the Greek parliament debated a phone tapping scandal, whose exposure practices last associated with military rules shocked the nation and has been met with stunned disbelief at the heart of the EU. Basically, there's an allegation the Greek government was installing malware on phones and spying on officials and their opposition, exactly. And so, it's kind of a thing.
So sounds a lot like, breaking into a hotel and and hence the Watergate analogy.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So this is interesting because this is like close to nation state level stuff. The software is not easy to get a hold of.
Right.
It's not easy to make software that can really breach a phone. You need physical access. So this isn't the kind of thing that the average person has to worry about.
Right.
Wait, but are you saying that Greece is not a nation state?
No, I'm saying that this is the kind of thing that is a nation state level level of play.
You're not in danger of getting hacked. But I did want to point out...
Your neighbor is less likely to do this to you.
Yeah. But I do want to point out that the spyware is called Predator. And I think we've talked about Predator on the show before, haven't we?
We have. Yeah. Yep.
So it has the ability to read encrypted messages and turn a phone into a listening device if the victim clicks on a link. Yeah.
Yeah. It literally does the things that the TV makes you think are really easy.
Yeah. Which are not really easy. But actually,
no, they're not.
In one of our stories today, we're going to tell you how you might defeat said type of application.
That's right.
So we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
Nice tease.
Yeah.
That's good.
Right?
So what's next, guys?
I think a continuation probably of a story we just first started talking about last week. So I think last week we had mentioned that the LA school district, which is second largest school district in the United States, 640,000 students from kindergarten through 12th grade, and they had a cyber attack, and some of their critical systems were shut down for a period of time.
Right.
Now, at the time when we were doing the podcast, it was speculated that this was a nation-state style attack for a couple different reasons. One, the attackers went straight for financials and contracting systems, right? So they were looking for how much the school district pays public contractors to do work, right?
Yeah.
Or at least access to those systems. So maybe changing bank accounts, whatever it may be. Since then, it has been uncovered that it was Vice Society that actually had performed the hack. Now, what's interesting is Vice Society, their typical MO is just a ransomware gang, right? But their typical MO is to steal data first, then ransomware. So that they
can force the ransom.
Exactly. 1-2 punch. Like, hey, listen, we encrypted all your data. And even if you say you have backups and you're going to restore, we don't care because we'll release some very sensitive information that we have. Yeah. Right? It's a little bit more compelling if they have either passwords or sensitive information from the organization. So that's an update from last week's story.
Well, there's some good advice right there. One is first rule is have backups, have offsite backups, have backups that aren't going to be contaminatable after they've been written, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because the bad guys are smart. They know if they can reach the backup. So you need offline backups. And you need a lot of them over time.
Yeah.
Right.
Second thing is don't have anything compromising on the network. It's just stupid to have things that, if you're a school district, you shouldn't have anything that's compromising. I'm sorry.
That's right.
It's just not.
Just because you ran out of storage at home for your porn collection,
I mean, don't storm at the school.
Doesn't mean you should bring them to school. Store them.
Thanks for that, Carl.
I know, because I got suspended over that in high school. No, I didn't. I got to say, I never ever got suspended.
There were no computers in high school when we went to high school.
I was going to say, the internet didn't exist when we were in high school, Carl.
We would have had to go to high school in NASA.
It's true. In fact, you're right. In fact, I got my first hard drive, which was an RLL 10 megabyte hard drive.
Woo!
It was after I graduated. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's
I had
no
a 10 megabyte.
Yeah.
My first computer I got when I was at West Point.
See,
okay, welcome to Real Guys Talk About Computers.
I was going to say, I remember AOL, CompuServe.
Back in my day,
it was all dial-up.
Didn't have error-correcting RAM.
2400 baud.
300. I had a 300
my graphics card was an Etch-a-Sketch.
Oh, here we go. I liked 300 baud because you could read it as it came over the screen. And when it got so fast you couldn't read it, I couldn't use the computer no more.
All right.
All right. This next one is interesting. iOS 16 lands today. Not today, of course, but this was September 12th. With these 5 new security and privacy features. And the one thing I learned during this launch is never schedule any kind of public event on YouTube when Apple is launching new products. Ask me how I know. 0
Did
viewers.
Did your whiskey taste testing not work?
No, 0 viewers. It's basically
it's funny. It used to be on Patch Tuesdays, never plan on using the internet. So it used to be Microsoft would take down the internet pushing out patches.
And now it's based on Netflix's release schedule.
Yeah, pretty much. So this is actually really good. And this bleeds into, this was what I was alluding to earlier. So we had talked about the Greek Watergate phone tapping apps. So iOS 16 came out, and iOS 16 came out a little while ago. And for those of you who have installed it, everybody can mention all of the wonderful features in there, right? Like you now have the ability to put on your lock screen a picture of, your friend or wife or child or whatever, and they're in front of the clock, and it's like the clock is behind their head, and it's super exciting, right?
Oh yeah.
But nobody actually knows the security features that were actually added. So what's interesting is these security features should be coming out, if I remember correctly. They're coming out next Monday. So I think it's next Monday. These security features will come out. But either way.
My phone's prompted me already for 16, but I think that's just a preparatory download.
Yeah, no. So this is It is, but this is a 16 update. So you can get 16 now. This is actually going to be an update post 16. Mm-hmm. But either way, by the time this podcast hits, it's all going to be rolled in. Absolutely make sure that you're going and updating your iPhone. So if you have an iPhone, one of the really neat new features is this feature called lockdown mode. Have you guys you guys will get to play with this. This is actually really cool. So lockdown mode is an extreme optional protection that should only be used if you believe you may be personally targeted by a highly sophisticated cyber attack. Wow. Most people are never targeted by a term.
So everybody that knows Dwayne.
100%. All you listeners. When iPhone is in lockdown mode, it will not function as it typically does. Apps, websites, and features will be strictly limited for security, and some experiences will be limited completely or be completely unavailable.
There is one very important feature, though, that will still work. The Paperweight app.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
And with a special case, it can be a Lego block.
With a special case. You guys are crazy.
When you get the radioactive protection Lego block so that it can't be,
Yeah.
So this is a great feature, though. If you are concerned, or if you're in Greece, but if you are concerned that you might be targeted
and politically active.
That's a requirement in order to get on the plane. You must upgrade to iOS 16.
Phone lockdown mode now. So this, I actually think this is great. I applaud them because it's really hard to know whether something is listening or whether there's some app that's found some way around security to turn on the microphones or whatever. So this is actually pretty awesome. And you know what? You can always turn it on and turn it off. So it might be cool to turn it on and see what happens.
That's what I'm saying. If you're going to be in a place where you think there's going to be a lot of, like, airports are a particularly crazy place,
or Russia.
Or or Greece.
Patrick. I just choked Dwayne.
As I'm drinking while Patrick's talking.
You could turn it off while you're flying over Moscow and then turn it back on when you land in Dubrovnik.
You know how you know lockdown mode is secure?
How's that?
Because it's super inconvenient.
It is super inconvenient. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, wait a second. Now, while you were talking about this, I went and started the installation process on my iPhone to 16, and it says temporarily remove apps to install software update.
Oh, do you not have enough?
Apps will be temporarily removed to make storage available for this software update.
Yeah, you don't have enough storage.
Yeah, you don't have enough storage, my man.
Delete all those cat pictures.
Yeah.
They're not really cat pictures, but okay.
Keep security this week, though.
I think I'll...
Giving you the benefit of the doubt.
I think I'll just wait on that till later.
But some of the other new cool security features. So you know how we always say automatically patch. You should always patch.
Yeah.
And on your iPhone, you can say, I want to do automatic updates, but still... Apple batches them all together, right? So they may only do one update every couple of months. Yeah. But even if there's a burning security issue, it's still all rolled into the one update. Now that's not the case. You actually have the ability to say, I want to instantly update for security issues. And Apple's going to start bundling in security and system vulnerability files so that they'll instantly get blown out. So if something's discovered that's a 0 day in the field that's exploiting iPhones, I think you're going to start to see those updates come quite a bit faster.
Yeah. Hey, I just bought a brand new Apple MacBook Pro fully loaded. You know why?
Why is that?
Because my existing one, which works, is 8 years old.
Yeah.
And Apple has determined that, no, that's too old. The software that you need won't work unless you upgrade to this OS. And guess what? Your MacBook Pro is too old for this new iOS.
Isn't that the Leonardo DiCaprio rule?
What's
what?
You're going to have to unpack that.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's a thing on the internet that he only dates really, really young.
Oh, in other words, he's a predator.
Every 8 year he upgrades. Yeah.
So that's back to the Predator malware. He is Predator malware.
I'm sorry, Leo.
Anyway, I purchased my old MacBook Pro for $4,400 8 years ago, and it works perfectly fine, except that Apple will not let me upgrade to the latest OS, which I need to do my development. So therefore, Apple put a gun to my head and said, you will buy a new MacBook now.
Well, I'm sure it's fine for browsing.
Sure.
They haven't stopped security updates and stuff like that.
No, it's still fine.
It's a Chromebook.
Just that
all they did was download it to a Chromebook.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, it's a Chromebook, exactly. It's a Safari book.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, what's next?
So wait, before we move on, two other cool security features.
Okay.
One, they actually now have the ability to instantly sever all connections with your account.
What?
It's called an emergency reset.
Oh.
They target this for situations of like
if it gets stolen,
abuse, spousal abuse. No, like where someone legitimately might have had access to your account and you need to get away. So you can they can't use the Find Me. They can't. It literally takes that phone out of the account. It's almost like a panic button, which is really nice.
Do you remember my daughter had a friend who thought that something happened with her account?
Yep.
That and I don't want to go into it here, but I introduced her to you guys and you gave her some advice, but it was one of those things where she needed to deactivate everything because she thought
that would have been handy.
Yeah,
it would have been.
She could have instantly just said emergency reset and then started rebuilding her account from there.
You should also do this just before you fake your own death.
It's criminal career advice.
Yes, if the FBI is too close,
the only criminal thing is suicide. I guess that is a crime that you cannot be charged with if you're successful.
Well, there you go. There you go. Last thing I wanted to talk about was copy and paste. So, apps can
not passkeys. I think you were talking about passkeys.
No, passkeys and whatever. Yeah, it's nice that they now share them everywhere and blah 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 whatever. But, but copy and paste. I'm always worried about like you go into your password manager, you copy a password. You accidentally switch to another app or whatever, or then go back to your browser and then try and paste it. Well, what apps have access to that clipboard for that period of time? Right. So, so it's really cool that they've now taken care of that.
So this is an example of Apple starting to assume breach.
Yes.
They're not trusting everything running on the phone.
Right. They know that their vetting process probably isn't 100%. So, and there's always going to be 0 days, right? Even if their vetting process for apps is 100%.
You know, one thing I like about LastPass is that besides the fact that they get hacked every once in a while and it's fun to make fun of them, but when you go to their vault and you copy a password because you need it maybe on your phone or you need it for another app and you don't have the Chrome plugin installed or whatever, it'll only stay in your clipboard until you paste it. And once you paste it, they take it out of your clipboard. It
goes away.
I like that.
Speaking of LastPass, they were actually... there were some updates to that when they got breached. What was it, 3 months ago?
Oh, yeah, that's right. They were ongoing investigation was going on,
Yeah, they said that the attacker had access to all that information for 4 days before LastPass found them. So.
And that was code that they got access to.
Not accounts.
It was not accounts.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what the fallout from that is. But anyways, all right, now I'm done with iOS 16.
With the code, can they read the account data?
They should know. They shouldn't be able to. If you take, we'll talk about a massive breach and what you might do. That's actually our final story. But if they were to have stayed with access to the code and maybe the signing keys and that sort of stuff, could they have maybe created a version of the application that looked legitimately signed and force install it on devices? Yeah, probably. But they never got that far.
Okay. All right, so this
Next
HP
one.
thing is one of those three question stories. So, Patrick, why don't you take this one?
So this is a story where a high severity vulnerability found in HP Support Assist tool. So HP Support Assist tool is pretty much installed in a lot of different locations. If you have HP products, which printers on HP products, scanners,
laptop,
those kinds of things, it installs the HP Support. If you get an HP laptop. Assistance tool, and it prompts you to patch it, and some people uninstall it as junk software, and a lot of people use it. Well, how do you know if this affects you? Well, if you have an HP computer with the HP Support Assist software installed, then you're specifically affected. I haven't seen that it affects non-HP computers, but there are lots of HP computers that run something similar to this. So I would still follow the same advice. And what's the advice? What do you do if you're affected? Well, if you're affected, then you need to update that to the latest version. There is an update for it, the support tool support update. In fact, they're in your face most of the time. You need to go now and update that. And the last question is why?
Yeah.
What's the big deal? What's the worst that could happen? What are the potential consequences? So the potential consequences is that as long as it's there, a user, a bad guy, could get low-level system privileges and dig in like a tick.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at, full system ownership by a bad actor, or the prospect of having to format the system.
Right.
So it's a pretty significant one.
I'm looking at the customer support knowledge base article.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not clear from reading this whether you can just go to Windows Update and get the latest, or you do have to actually go to HP and download a new version, or is it?
I think it has its own update built into the tool.
It does.
It has its own update.
Okay.
Yep. You can click About in the tool. So if you're using the older version 8X, then what you need to do is click About and then click Check for Updates, and it should fire up an update for you.
So let's talk about some statistics for this real quick. So it's CVSS score is 8.2. There is a patch available for it, so it's not.
What does that score mean? That's how severe it is.
It's how severe. How severe the people who maintain.
And is it like a Richter scale? Is it exponential?
Goes to 10.
But is it exponential or is it?
It is
linear.
It is.
It is
Yeah.
exponential.
Yeah. So
I would say, I when we start taking a look at like an 8.2 as opposed to a 9, 9s are pretty devastating. 10 is like the software's on fire. Yeah, exactly. So 8.2, I'd definitely say it's more of a Richter scale than a linear scale.
But the reason to think that this isn't as bad as it sounds so far is that it's a privilege escalation, which means it's not going to give me access to your system. It's going to give me high level privileges if I already have access to your system.
Okay.
So it doesn't let me in the door. It opens the safe in the bedroom. It doesn't get me in the house. It gives me credentials inside the house. So it isn't a 10 would be something that somebody walking by your house would get access to
Burn
your
down
system.
your house.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. From the outside without thinking about it. So, and it hasn't been seen exploited in the wild, but it's estimated there's 50 million plus systems that are vulnerable to this. So it's widespread.
We see this type of attack quite a bit. And, to break it down a little bit, this HP support assistant runs privileged. So it runs as a system administrator because it needs to install drivers.
Right. Sure.
Right. That's its job, is to update drivers.
Yeah.
So with a little DLL hijacking, you can run malicious code and tell it in essence, hey, here's an update, go update it. And it's running malicious code elevated. Right. So, and we saw this with the Razer app, earlier this year. So I think we'll see more of these types of tools need to have better controls around security and what they load.
Okay.
Yep. So hopefully people can take that and run with that advice. If you're running this HP support assistant, there's a patch available, go patch it. Otherwise, Dwayne will come own your system.
Now, do we have another 3-question story, Patrick?
There is. Cisco has declared that they're not going to fix an authentication bypass vulnerability that's found in their small business routers. And that's because these are end of life. But because a lot of people run old hardware. Carl Franklin,
come on now. It's only 8 years old and it works just fine. Thank you.
Apparently it doesn't, according to you. So if you're running an old Cisco router, there's 4 models and one feature that needs to be enabled for you to be vulnerable. And they are the RV110W, RV130 or 130W, and the RV215W. And they have to be running the IPsec VPN server.
I have an old RV that has a 215 watt generator. That's how.
Yeah, wrong kind of RV, I think.
That's how it goes.
But because they've reached end of life, they're not going to receive a security fix. So you should probably upgrade immediately to something newer. And in a pinch, if you need to use it for the time being, I would disable the IPsec VPN server.
How do mere mortals disable the IPsec VPN server? Isn't that like uncoupling the Heisenberg compensators on the Star Trek? Isn't that like a Moriarty move that doesn't exist?
Right?
So if there's no one who knows how to do it, it's probably not enabled. Is the good part.
Oh, it's not on by default kind of thing.
No.
I don't think so.
It
I
sounds like something
these
that
models,
you have
but
to
it's typically
no. You'd have to turn that on. It's if you wanted access to home computers and resources and that sort of stuff when you're away, you would turn this on so you could connect in.
Yeah.
So, if you can get to the administrative interface and shut that off, that would give you some time. But really, new hardware is one of those hallmarks. You got to patch your stuff and you got to keep it updated. And then the consequences are an unauthenticated and remote hacker that successfully exploits the vulnerability could gain admin level on the network.
Right.
And that's a big deal.
But there are other things that you can do, like your guest network shouldn't be touching your computers. Your computers should all be on a dedicated Wi-Fi network. The heavy password and all that stuff. You shouldn't have
defense.
You shouldn't have share with no passwords for everyone on your drives. Stuff like that.
Wow, you've been paying attention.
I live this stuff, man. I'm getting free advice from you guys.
It's defense in depth. Somebody used to say, well, no security through obscurity. And I said, yeah, but we don't paint tanks Dayglow orange. We still camouflage tanks. But they don't depend on that for their defense. They have armor and other things. So it is defense in depth. So that's our second story for this week. And we're going to have more of these as we come along.
I want to go back to the Apple thing for a minute because they're easy to pick on. During that whole launch thing, they also announced a new Apple Watch that has like satellite uplink and stuff and all these crazy things. Like it knows where you are at all times. It's got like, wristwatch phone. It's got.
Why don't they just give the Greek politicians those?
I know. I'm thinking, wow, okay. So they just opened up a whole new set of attack vectors for that watch, and I wonder, I'm betting you dollars to donuts that in the next year, we're going to see a story about how the new Apple Watch was hacked. I guarantee it.
I think there's a high probability, but they're also very security conscious. They also, it's possible to do all that stuff securely, but it's hard.
So I don't know. Okay. All right. Take this, for example, GPS, that's done via satellite, right? And that's hackable. You can actually override the GPS signals coming from space. Because if you have your own local transmission that's more powerful, it'll override GPS. So could you potentially record the signals coming in and then override it so you're more powerful than satellites?
I saw Lenny and Squiggy from Happy Days do this in a movie once.
Hold my beer.
I mean, you're also leaving off the fact that like an IMSI catcher everybody thinks it's... An IMSI catcher is a device that you use to make a fake cell tower, so you can intercept cell tower traffic and man in the middle cell conversations. And everyone says, "Oh, it's an IMSI catcher," and they think it's the size of a Netgear router, and they're not. They're the size of a pickup truck or a delivery van or a tractor trailer. Because
give it 10 years, it'll be the size of a pineapple.
Right? Piece of cake. Everybody will have one.
Do you mean
of
Wi-Fi
course.
pineapple or regular pineapple?
Yeah, and for that you're going to have to go back to episode 1. I think we talked about the pineapple in episode 1.
We did.
Yeah.
All right,
sir.
Okay, shall we move on to Teams?
Ooh, I love Teams.
You know you don't.
Who doesn't love Teams?
You are
Teams
full
is
of crap.
A pain in the ass to you.
I think even its mother doesn't like it.
Teams has always been difficult to use. And now it's a security flaw. So
this
interestingly
is so
enough
hard to
about
believe,
Teams,
man. I can't believe this.
Is it? So Teams is what they call an Electron app. So for those of you who don't know Teams, it's a Microsoft application used for collaboration.
It's the answer. It's more like Slack, actually.
It's like Slack's not so smart brother.
Right. It's like a combination of Slack and Zoom and Skype all rolled together. Yeah.
Right. But what's interesting about Teams is you have to authenticate into the back end office 365 system or whatever it is you're using Teams for, right?
Yeah.
You can use it as a guest, but normally organizations, you're going to authenticate with Teams.
Because you're on a team.
Right. And if you have multi-factor authentication on, which you should, everybody should have MFA on. But if you have MFA on, that's fine. You should have that set. The problem that was discovered, and this hasn't been seen in the wild being exploited yet. But the problem that was discovered is the fact that Teams is what's known as an Electron app. Right. So an Electron app is, in essence, it looks like an application, but it's literally running in a browser.
Right.
So when you go to run Teams, it's running a browserized version of an application, not really a full-blown like Windows 32 or Windows 64-bit application. You know, the bonuses to them allows them to run on multiple platforms, allows the web browser experience to be exactly the same as the app experience. Fantastic. The problem is the Electron app does not support encryption of local cookie files. So when you authenticate into, say, Office 365, your cookie that comes down with an authentication token is now clear text.
In other words, it's not encrypted on your drive.
Right. So somebody who has physical access to your box
like Dwayne,
will be able to get this. Like me. Because know this, listeners, I have access to all the physical boxes.
That's all the boxes.
All the boxes.
Hackalltheboxes.com. So yeah, this is really important because most of the time when you go to a website, you sign in with a password, you get a cookie and it's completely encrypted and nobody understands it except the server, right? And so somebody couldn't just take that cookie and use it and then log in as you. They couldn't do it. So, not so much in this case. Yeah. And Electron is actually a product name, right? It's essentially I remember back in the days of Visual Basic programming, you had this VB4 Windows app, and then there was this web browser control that you could throw on it. And then in the web browser control, you could programmatically navigate to websites. And so that is essentially what an Electron app is. It's a native shell that has a browser window in it, and then everything that you're seeing comes in through that browser window. Yeah, so that's disheartening that Teams. First of all, I don't like Teams. Every time I use it, I can't get authenticated because you're not logged into the right tenant or something. Or no, this tenant, and they both have the same name, and they both look exactly the same. And you use the same email address, and there's just this extra layer of complexity that I don't like. But anyway, that's my rant. I'm sticking to it.
Unfortunately, a Microsoft spokesperson has said the technique of taking this cookie, or the technique described above in the article that we'll be posting, does not meet our bar for immediate servicing, as it requires an attacker to first gain access to the target network.
Wow.
So they said, hey, we appreciate you.
Which never happens. Could never happen.
Right. Attackers don't get access to networks.
Yeah.
It's crazy talk. So the mitigation right now is just recommends to clear your cookies, honestly. And how do you do that? If you go to the app.
Or you could use Slack.
Or you could.
Actually, isn't Slack also an Electron app? If you install the app?
That's a good question.
I think it is.
That's a good question.
Oh, maybe we'll dig into Slack and see if we find the same issue.
Yeah, I mean, I use Slack in the browser, and they keep wanting me to install the Windows app, and I think it's an Electron app. That's why I don't do it.
Oh.
Because Electron's slow.
Maybe more on that next week. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, unfortunately, that's the answer. Unfortunately, I see it from Microsoft more often than others, but that's a big answer of, well, this isn't a real problem. So, okay, then when we do red teams and we get on a network, because we always get on the network, and we go and exploit this, that customer is going to complain, and you're going to tell them, oh, it's not a problem. You're going to lose customers.
Awesome.
And that brings us to Uber.
Uber.
Uninstall Uber now.
This is the Uber story.
Uninstall Uber. Run away from Uber.
Go ahead.
What have we learned today if we were Uber? We learned not to make teenagers mad. That's what we've learned.
That's right.
So Yahoo.
Yeah.
Yahoo.com says Uber computer systems is breached by teen and major security alert. And we're linking the Yahoo news article.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you will not find a major news outlet out there that does not have this article. It is such a major breach.
Right.
I follow probably 300 or 400 of security researchers on Twitter, and literally my entire timeline from last night to this morning was just this. It was everybody talking about it.
But it was a social engineering thing, right? This teen compromised an employee's official Slack account and then posted a message. How did they do that?
So first off, social engineering we've talked about before is manipulating someone to do something.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, there are still reports coming out as to how this happened. However, the current thinking is there is a support engineer at Uber who has, at 3 a.m., kept receiving a bunch of notifications that somebody was trying to log into their account. Then they got contacted over WhatsApp from somebody posing as the Uber support IT team, saying, "Oh my gosh, seems like our MFA authentication app is going crazy. You got to just click OK on that because token stuck," or whatever. Came up with some believable story as to why this person should have just allowed it. And it's 3 a.m. and the phone's going off constantly. And the guy was like, "Yeah, whatever. Okay, fine," and just authenticated.
And we'll call this MFA motherfunky authentication.
Well, and I do wonder whether that guy is going to do that on his new job.
But just to know how far down the rabbit hole this goes, so far what I've seen is everything from reports of 2 petabytes of data being pulled off of Uber's network, everything from customer information to where you've had Ubers pick you up and drop you off to you can imagine they all of the AWS, so all of their cloud properties, they had PowerShell scripts. So as soon as the hacker got into the network, they did what we would normally do and started scanning and seeing what they'd find, and they found some PowerShell scripts that actually had all of the administrative keys to the cloud properties. So then they started going in and started locking everything out, and this is probably one of the most devastating breaches.
Well, they said this was a teenager. Did they find the kid?
What's there's a couple people actually in my timeline. I think it was VX Underground. If you take a look at those, that Twitter handle, who's been chatting with the person who actually did the breach, going back and forth and saying, "Yeah, this is what I did. This is how I got access to it," and that sort of stuff. So.
18 years old, they said.
So if I didn't have that data point, I would certainly think this was a nation state trying to get information, like when China hacked, supposedly hacked Marriott.
It says that right here in this article, the cyber attacker told the New York Times that he was 18 years old, and he told the Post that he'd broken into the company's systems for his own entertainment. Uber employees reportedly believed the Post to be a joke at first. It's just some stupid teenager.
Yeah, crazy kids.
What can a teenager do?
In the incident, personal information like names, phone numbers, and Uber users worldwide were stolen, along with names and license numbers of 600,000 drivers,
including 82,000 drivers based in the UK. Wow.
Didn't you say it was 2 petabytes of data?
Well, I hope those petabytes are in jail now, because that's not cool.
Not cool. Yeah, and right now it is a treasure trove of information from what I'm hearing. So more on this later, but I think, this literally happened not more than, hours ago. I'd say not more than 24 hours.
So our advice, this all switch to Lyft.
No, that's a good point. So I would say some advice might be also, we don't know how deep this rabbit hole goes. Yeah, you're right, Patrick. So I don't know what what Uber's security is on customers' usernames and passwords stored in the database.
Right.
So yeah, if you're using your Uber password somewhere else,
I bet it's every bit as good as the passwords to their cloud resources.
probably, and not stored anywhere.
And if all else fails, just hang out on the Uber Slack channel and ask the support engineers for their credentials. They'll most likely give it to you.
They'll give it, yeah.
All networks are eggs. They're either raw or
Patrick,
hard-boiled.
you are a font
If they're
of
hard-boiled,
sayings. I love this.
Font
Yes.
of analogy. All networks are eggs. They're either hard-boiled, in which case every layer is tough and hard to get through, or they're soft and chewy on the inside. And we just found out that
What if you
Uber's
soaked
is
them
soft
in
and chewy
acid?
on the
Then
inside.
the
Then
shell
they're
becomes
rubbery?
soft, and then you can just poke them.
Then they're colorful.
Just poke them.
But wait, real advice. So I would say if you do have an Uber account, assume that your password has been compromised. If you're using it somewhere else,
Yeah.
make sure you change the other service.
Hang
They
on a
already
second.
have your password to Uber,
I'm gonna do this
right?
right now.
So change your Uber one. But if you're using a local Uber account, not like, hey, I use single sign-on with Google. Like I was using Uber, and I use Google as my authenticator to that. So I don't have an Uber username and
you're
password.
fine.
There's just an authentication token that comes from Google. But if you have a local account with them, then change your password there. But if you use that password anywhere else, you absolutely want to change that.
Well, I know what
don't
I'm
know
doing
if
this
they got
weekend.
access to credit cards. Yeah, right. I don't know if they got
What?
Carl, please tell me that you're not reusing that password, Carl. Okay, that's good, Carl.
No, I
Friends don't
took
let
care
friends
of my
reuse
passwords.
passwords.
You're the
And I'm calling this show "It's Uber Time." Do you know where your teenager is?
Yeah, he's hacking Lyft.
Take it from us.
that's
Use
awesome.
Lyft. All right, guys, this has been a fun show, and hope everybody's
Always
staying
good to
safe
talk to
out
you.
there, and patch often, and don't take any wooden nickels.
Don't use old Macs.
Oh, I don't think that's advice. That's a reality. They won't let you. All right, see you guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.